Okay, welcome to the next lesson in this series about the management strategy. So again, let's have a little thinking time before we even embrace it. Okay, here's our scenario. We've got here, it looks like a footwear production business, could be the Nike, Adidas, etc. What's going on? In year one, we're producing 10,000 shoes, but this year it's declined to 8,000. The level of wastage, though, has gone from 100 to 1,000. So we're wasting far more. And the number of customer returns has gone from 5 to 150. Again, a worsening scenario. So if you were my management consultant, what would you suggest I possibly do as strategies to respond to these key performance indicators? Well, I'm guessing straight off the top of your head, you might be going, well, you've got a lot of workforce on here, and maybe they're making some mistakes, and maybe we can invest in technology, okay? Or maybe we can invest in lean management, if some of you can remember back to that area there, or quality. So again, we're looking at strategies to respond, and that's what this lesson is going to be all about. So if you're thinking that way, you're on the right track. Let's start with the course. So this lesson, again, is part 2. Okay, we're looking at strategies to respond to key performance indicators. And in this lesson, we're going to take the next series. Okay, so we're going to look at these ones here. So in the previous lesson, we've already covered staff training and motivation, etc. In this lesson, we're going to look at technology and increasing our investment in technology, improving quality and production, initiating lean production techniques, and redeployment of resources. And again, for probably 3 out of the 4 there, you've heard of these terms before back in Unit 3, and we're going to capitalize on that knowledge they already have and then use it and apply it to different case studies. So investment in technology. If you remember back to when we saw this, and there's a whole link here you can tap onto, this was the Terminator series when we're looking at all sorts of ways that technology can be embraced in businesses, whether it's automated production lines, making cars, or robotics, computer-aided design and manufacturing, breaking it down and how you're going to use it on a computer before you actually manufacture those items. Artificial intelligence and the growing use of that in business, and online services to actually reach out to your customers so they can purchase and order your products from you. So a whole range of different ways we can use technology to respond to key performances in the businesses. And remember, technology can give us some great things. It can increase our productivity, precision, accuracy, and quality, and therefore can be used for a whole bunch of key performance indicators. So have that in your head. So let's apply this and see and use our thinking cap to when we can use this strategy of increased investment in technology to respond to some key performance indicators. So let's take our situation here. We're going to be a chemical manufacturing company today. So as our key performances come about, think about how we can apply technology in this situation to resolve these issues. So first of all, chemical manufacturing, we've got low productivity rates. We're not producing many of the chemicals in each shift. We've got people working for us. So maybe we think to ourselves, using that information, that KPI is telling us that employees are struggling to keep up with additional demands. Maybe we're getting more orders and we're demanding them to do more, but they can't keep up and they're struggling and productivity rates are falling. Therefore, we could be thinking as a manager, by implementing a strategy of increased investment in technology, hopefully that will increase the speed of production. So rather than having workers on the production line, we could have computers and robotics, an automated production line or robotics doing that for us. That will increase the speed of production and build more products, provide more chemicals. If we do that, that will hopefully lead to greater volumes of production and additionally lower cost per unit. And by doing that, we're going to deal with the issue of productivity rates. So again, hopefully you can see this is like a story. You need to layer and explain your connections. What are you thinking to the assessor, to the examiner? How are you going to use this strategy to respond to these key performance indicators? So do the same again with this one here. In your head, how would you use technology to respond to increasing customer complaints or wastage rates increasing? Or in this case, and we'll go this one together, workplace accidents. If workplace accidents are really high, maybe, especially in a chemical manufacturing business, we have an issue here that's high risk of inputs and outputs, such as chemicals and glass. It's a very dangerous environment. Therefore, if we invest in technology by having robots replace staff in these high-risk jobs, that will hopefully reduce that. And we'll get reduced workplace accidents. And instead, we could use those workers in other parts of the business. Okay? Again, hopefully going to reduce the KPI that was originally the trigger for us pulling the idea of investing in technology as a strategy to resolve that issue. So hopefully you can see this connection. And that's what you want to be doing in your answers, explaining the impact that the KPI has and how this strategy can have that solution that you're looking for. Okay, our next strategy is improving quality in production. And again, hopefully this is triggering off like sort of your memory cells just firing straight away. I've heard this one before, okay? We've talked about before quality control, quality assurance, and total quality management. And again, if you want a bit of a recap, click on this link here and it'll take you to a more in-depth analysis of those strategies. But we'll be thinking, okay, by improving our quality, then hopefully this is going to allow us to better meet our customer expectations. Therefore, if we've got better quality, then our competitor will get a competitive advantage. Okay, so you can be thinking in your head, how's this linked to KPIs? Well, improving quality should hopefully improve number of sales, increase the percentage of market share because customers like our products because they're better quality, and therefore hopefully lead to net profit figures increasing and reducing the number of complaints and level of wastage. Better quality items, customers are happier, less complaints, and hopefully more revenue and sales, and therefore ultimately hopefully profits. So you can see hopefully we can use this strategy for a whole range of key performance indicators. So again, let's take our scenario here and step this one out just like you would do in a required response from you. So let's go back to our beloved chocolate business, and we're going to be thinking about these KPIs and what's happening and what it might be indicating. So in our chocolate factory, maybe we've got a high number of customer complaints. They're not happy and they're complaining. Products are coming back to us. Why might that be occurring? Well, maybe we're producing substandard chocolate bars. That's what they're complaining about. So therefore, if we're producing substandard items, a quality strategy, like maybe quality control, and putting that on our production line to make sure that we're checking and rejecting, we'll make sure that more quality goods reach our end consumers. And if we have poor quality goods, they get rejected, so they never end up in their hands. Now, if that occurs, we get greater quality and greater accuracy, then hopefully we'll get less complaints. And by nature, then solve that key performance indicator problem. Okay, so hopefully you can again see what we're trying to do here is apply our strategy to respond to the key performance indicators and have a better end result. So do the same in your heads. How could we use quality control to respond to these key performance indicators and therefore lead to a better end result? Okay, our next strategy is about initiating lean production techniques. Now, again, hopefully this is tricking off memories for you, okay, that you can relate back to Unit 3, Lean Management. Here's a click to the link if you want to have a bit more detail, and you probably remember this bakery scenario when we're producing cakes and that little video insert. But remember, we're looking at pots, pull, one-piece flow, tact, zero defects. So the idea being we only make items when the customer orders it. That pulls the order, that sets the chain in motion, okay? We focus on one piece at a time as we're moving down the line. The tact, we want a rhythm, so every part of the production process is in sync with the next one. And we're aiming for zero defects at the end. So at the end here, the customer gets a perfect cake. Okay, so that's lean management. We're trying to systematically reduce waste in the entire production process. Okay, now again, be thinking, how is this going to link to key performance indicators? Well, hopefully we're going to have reduced wastage. Okay, and therefore we've got reduced wastage, reduced expenses, and ultimately, hopefully, better net profit figures. So we can use this strategy to resolve a number of issues in our business. So let's take the first one. We've got a fine dining restaurant. Okay, beautiful, exquisite food here. You can imagine here. Okay, and we'll be thinking our key performance indicators are coming through. How can we possibly use lean production to resolve those issues? So let's think about the process and step it out nicely. So our figures come in. We've got our fine dining restaurant. We're finding we've got a huge amount of waste going on. The lobsters and the caviar is all being wasted, okay? What's going wrong, okay? Or our net profit figures are very low. Our revenue against expenses. Our expenses are blowing out and we're not making much profits. So let's draw into that bit more detail. Well, maybe we looked inside our kitchen, we've got excess products that are being made. We're producing too many lobsters, okay? And we're just producing them in a way that we're not actually using them. Because they're perishable, they're going to get thrown away. So that's clearly the problem here with the waste levels. How could lean production principles come into play? Well, instead of mass producing these lobster tails with the lovely sauces before for our fine dining and no one's eating them, maybe we wait to that customer demand level to pull through the order and we make the lobster tail specifically for that order. And equally, if we make sure that the high quality of food is being made fresh for each customer by having that pull and the one-piece flow, and we work on that one lobster tail so it arrives at the table in perfect symmetry and with zero defects, that's going to be a much better quality item for the consumer to purchase from us. Well, if we do that, then hopefully this will lead to increased efficiency, effectiveness, and quality of processes. Efficiency, because we're using our resources far better to optimize our eventual output. Okay. Effectiveness, we're producing a really quality level that meets the market need of our customers. And the quality is all increasing as well. Okay. We're producing this beautiful lobster tail made to order rather than being mass produced. We should hopefully also have less excess product. Okay. We're going to keep the raw material perfect till we actually need it and only produce it to that order. Should lead to less wastage. And then ultimately, we should get a far better level of customer satisfaction with the end result being beautifully made for them. So all of those processes should help to resolve these key performance indicators and lead to a much better situation. Okay, so hopefully you can see how lean production techniques and initiating them is a strategy to resolving key performance indicators. Do the same again with this scenario. How can you step that out to then get a really detailed answer for the assessor when you're initiating this management strategy? Now, our next strategy, redeployment of resources. Now, I'm guessing initially that's not going to resonate with you, okay, in terms of, well, where's that word come from? Well, you've heard of the word resources before. We've talked about resources in terms of the elements of an operating system. So if you go back to the elements, inputs, process, outputs, the inputs were our resources, and that's where we're going to drive in here, okay? So we're going to build up from that, how we can use this strategy and redeploy them, okay? So resources, what are we talking about here? They could be natural things, okay? So timber, water, solar energy, or other raw materials, okay? Natural from the earth. So if you're thinking as a furniture business, we're going to be using timber as our natural resource to make the furniture. Our next resource is labor. Okay, so labor is our employees, our workers. Okay, so they're our resource. So in our furniture manufacturer, we're talking about here the carpenters that are doing that job and adding the labor component to it. And then capital, another resource. Now, when we talk about capital, we're talking about equipment and buildings. Sometimes capital can get associated with finance, okay, but it's also a broader term for resources in terms of equipment and buildings. So if we have a furniture manufacturer warehouse, then within that, we'll have certain tools. We'll have the saws and the lathes. That's our equipment in the capital area. And we also have our building in which we're operating and making the furniture. So therefore, our resources are all three aspects of that. I'm going to draw out all three of them and how we can possibly redeploy them. So ultimately, what we mean by redeployment is using those resources in a different way that better meets our business objectives. So let's take the natural resources in this case here as our first example. How can we redeploy them? Well, if you think about it, during COVID pandemic, there was a lot in the media about using corn, barley, wheat, or grapes, which in the previous bit were used to make gin, alcoholic beverages. Okay. Instead, during the pandemic, we needed hand sanitizer. So some businesses changed their use of gin production into hand sanitizer. The raw resources were the same. We just redeployed them and used them in a different way to create a different end product. And we created those hand sanitizer from it. So a good example of how business can redeploy their natural resources. Let's take the next category of labor resources. we can redeploy these people in different parts of the business or move them from one team to another depending on the business needs. So, for example, if robots replace high-risk repetitive tasks on production line, we might move those workers to another area. So we talked earlier on about a chemical manufacturing business. Ideally, you don't really probably want your employees on there because there's a risk of dangers and hazards to their health. Instead, they have great knowledge about the product. So maybe we could redeploy them into the marketing team to help sell that product to the end consumer because they know so much about it. So redeploying them to another department. So this is a great alternative to redundancies because it's retaining that staff morale and business knowledge. You can imagine that scenario there. If we got rid of those workers, we've got to pay for the redundancy program. It's going to create bad morale. Staff is going to be upset, and even the remaining workforce are going to feel fearful that maybe they're next. By redeploying them, we're keeping that wealth of skills and knowledge and experience in our business and using it for a different purpose in terms of marketing and selling products. So it's hopefully a win-win scenario for redeployment of our labor resource. And our third category are capital resources. We can also redeploy those. Okay, so we can use them in a new way or repurpose them or move the production completely. So the idea being here, we can move machinery or goods or even the actual physical location of the warehouse itself to a new location. So maybe we can move machinery from one plant to another where it's going to be better utilized. Okay, we need them at that place, and so we're going to move them from the Melbourne branch to the Brisbane branch. Okay, and reuse that capital resources there. Or maybe ultimately we're actually going to look for an overseas location to do manufacture, and we're going to move our resources, our capital and equipment over there instead to make access of that cheaper labor force. So there's lots of ways of moving natural resources, labor resources, and capital resources to redeploy them to better meet our business objectives. So let's go back to our gin distillery example and see how we can use this strategy of redeployment of resources to deal with some KPI issues. So here's our lovely glass of gin that we're going to be redeploying. Okay, so let's imagine that the gin distillery has got some issues. We're looking at our KPIs and the level of wastage is high. Okay, we're getting rid of a lot of products on the floor that we're not really using. Okay, and the number of sales are down. Less people are purchasing our gin. So what is this possibly indicating to us? Well, the sales are low. Okay, maybe that's leading to excess stock, which is perishing before sale, and now it's adding to our wastage. Maybe also the product doesn't meet the customer needs, and people are no longer purchasing that type of gin because it doesn't something they want to have anymore with their gins and tonics. So we could use this strategy of redeployment to use those resources in a different way. So we can take these grains and the items that go into the gin and instead make hand sanitizer. Okay, so we've redeployed our natural resource. Hopefully, that's going to reduce the wastage because we're now using it for a better product that better meets our market needs. There'll be less environmental impact, and in a positive sense, we're going to have more sales because it's now something we really need with the hand sanitizer, and so we're addressing the key performance indicator problems we had earlier on. Okay, so think of that in the same scenario here. How can we use redeploying resources to deal with certain key performance issues? Now, as well as responding to KPIs, we can also seek new business opportunities. Okay. And redeploying resources allows us to tap into that. So the idea of this hand sanitizer gel was a new opportunity that suddenly came around during COVID, and lots of gin distilleries moved to this process of redeploying their resources to target this because it was hugely in demand. We didn't have enough hand sanitizer. So those businesses suddenly moved that production across to make the sanitizer and take advantage of this new business opportunity that arose during the COVID pandemic. That itself was a new opportunity those businesses capitalized on, and therefore redeployment was a great strategy to seek new business opportunities. Okay, so let's look at a worked example of how this knowledge from this lesson that we just covered about management strategies could be used in assessment purposes. Okay, so here's a classic question and we'll unpack that for us. Okay, so we have, and remember, we always take our trusty pen. What are our key words? Okay, we're being asked to identify, describe, and justify. Okay, so we've got to propose something, we've got to describe that strategy, and then also why. Why is that strategy going to be useful? So we're looking at a management strategy to respond to a business experiencing declining sales numbers. Okay, so in our heads, we're already thinking, okay, here's our KPI. We've got declining sales numbers. What strategy could we use to respond to that? So jumping ahead to where the marks are going to come here, you can imagine in the 4 marks for this question here, we're going to get something for identifying the strategy. We're being required to have a suggestion, propose something. We then need to describe that, and then we need to justify it in relation to the issue of the declining sales. Okay, so you can see how we're going to step that out for the assessor. So hopefully you can now see that right in here. So thinking in your heads, a management strategy to respond to a business experiencing declining sales numbers is improving quality in production. Okay, we've identified it. We made it very clear to the assessor, bang, I know my stuff. Now we need to describe that. So this involves implementing strategies like quality control, which uses the principle of check and reject. So if a product fails to meet a predetermined strategy, it will be rejected before it reaches the customer. This will involve employees being stationed at different points of the production line with the intention of analysing their products as they move along the production line and removing those that fail to meet the standards. So bang, okay, we've got our identification. Now we're describing it. Beautiful. Okay, now finally we need to have the why. Okay, why linked to that sales numbers. So improving quality in production via quality control will ensure that no substandard product reaches the customer. This will lead to higher customer satisfaction and growing public belief in the reputation of the business. Over time, this should translate into greater sales, and assuming competitor sales remain constant, then this will see the business gaining more market share from the competitors and being a stronger presence in that market. Beautiful. So you can see the why. So this is the telling the story that we've looked at in the lesson. We've worked out what is going wrong with the key performance indicator. We're identifying a strategy to link to that. Now we need to step out. What is the impact and how is it going to resolve that key performance indicator problem of declining sale numbers? So hopefully there you can see exactly how you would scaffold a really good answer to that certain question. Okay, so putting this all together, we have our trusted penguin with now an ever-expanding toolkit of different strategies available to deal with and respond to key performance indicators. So in this lesson here, we've covered investment in technology, quality in production, initiating lean production and redeployment of resources. Our next lesson will round this off with the remaining strategies to respond to key performance indicators. So I look forward to seeing you then.